All right, let's get going. Welcome to Courting a Client from Project Start to BFF. I am Andrea Dottling. Yep, and who am I? I co-founded IDLance with Parker Grant. He actually gave me my first freelance gig ever, writing text message courses. I'm sure you guys have heard that story a million times, and if not, it's true. Yep, I have an MEd in Learning and Technology from Western Governors University and a master's in Media Studies from the New School in New York, where I made a documentary and accidentally studied instructional design. Now that I look back on it, more about that some other time. And yeah, I have, I guess, over 10 years, 11 years of all that experience. I'm really bad at numbers. Could be more, could be less. That number sounds about right, right? Time is a flat circle. It's all relative. Um, and why should you care about this? Well, clients are kind of your bread and butter, right? And to do well, you have to have a loyal client base. Building relationships with clients helps you establish a loyal customer base. And when clients have positive experiences working with a freelancer like you, they're more likely to return for future projects and refer the freelancer, aka you, to others in their network. So this can lead to a steady stream of work and more opportunities so you can grow your business. You'll also, of course, want to build your industry reputation, and maintaining good relationships with clients can lead to higher rates of satisfaction. By taking the time to understand your client's needs and preferences, freelancers can deliver work that meets or exceeds their expectations, which is really important. And that leads to, I don't know, positive reviews, testimonials, recommendations, and that can help attract new clients and projects. Also could lead to some new friends, which is always fun. We'll talk more about that later. It also will help increase your job satisfaction, right? So, developing strong relationships with clients can lead to more fulfilling work experiences. And when you feel valued and appreciated by your clients, you're more likely to enjoy your work, right? And take pride in everything that you deliver. This can lead to, of course, greater job satisfaction, as we said, and a stronger sense of purpose in your work. And also, it's just the right thing to do. You don't want to be a jerk. You want to be liked, right? And believe it or not, your client's also a human. So treat them with the respect and empathy that you'd like to be treated with. Um, and so here we go. Here is what we'll cover. We're going to talk about the actionable steps before, during, and after a contract, how to make an initial connection, how to maintain regular relationship building communication. And I'm sorry if I keep glancing back and forth, right? I got lots going on all these screens. And how to win your clients over using your personality and skills. And then something that doesn't often get explicitly talked about, other than like, in like hardcore businessy things, like, oh, follow up, follow up, follow up. But when your business is kind of based on your personality, you want to, sort of personally stay on their mind after a job is done, right? And in an appropriate way. You can, yeah, an appropriate way, not inappropriate way. Anyway, okay. So, yeah, we got Bill Gates on there. Kind of looks like him. Your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. So, before we jump into the webinar, let's take a look at this quote. And he was pretty deep there. Yeah. And so, here's the thing, if you've ever received negative feedback from a client, it's okay. Everyone is learning. Negative feedback or criticism from unhappy clients can actually provide valuable insights for you to improve your customer service chops. While it sucks to hear negative feedback, it's important to pay attention to it so you can learn from your mistakes, make some changes, and ultimately provide a better overall experience for your clients. And we always say, don't focus on the mistake, focus on the rebound. Yeah, you can use it as an opportunity to learn and improve. So, that being said, let's check out some ways to avoid getting negative feedback in the first place. Okay. Your to do list. First up on our to do list today is how to schmooze up your client before the contract. We're going to cover, I mean, schmooze in a good way. I don't ever advocate being fake or not being yourself. And some of this, is tongue in cheek, but you know what we really mean and what we're all about here. So we're going to cover how to make a connection, being yourself, being excited, but not being a hero. And we'll talk about what that means. And then later, we'll talk about those other things. Okay, so the relationship meter. Here we go. It's kind of a visual tool that I mentally think about to measure the strength and quality of relationships with clients. It typically involves evaluating various factors such as customer satisfaction, loyalty, communication, trust, engagement, also just the vibe of how you feel working with the client. And it's a handy way to spot places where you may need to improve as your relationship with the client continues to unfold over the duration of a project. And this meter of, like I said, it exists in your head. So use your common sense, critical thinking, and intuition to gauge how things are going. And ideally, your relationship meter will inch closer and closer to total, blissful, mutual admiration by project's end. If you're considering dressing up as your client in your free time, or you find yourself building altars in your closet to your client, you've probably gone too far. So be careful of that. But phase one, you're just kind of getting to know each other. You're a little bit unsure. They're like, oh, is this project really going to go as we want? And you're like, oh, is this client going to be okay? Is it going to be cool? Is it going to be corporate and stuffy? Then by phase two, you're sort of getting to know each other. You're getting in a flow. You're cool with each other. And things are going well, hopefully. By phase three, hopefully you've made more of a human connection, right? Where you have little inside jokes together throughout your project and you're kind of keeping them entertained as you're working with them, but of course, all in a professional way. And by phase four, they should be in love with you. Again, in an appropriate way. You want a long term relationship with them. They should want you back after you've worked together. Okay, so let's get into it. Before the contract, you want to make a connection. Let your client see your human side and try to draw out theirs. Share a real life anecdote, kids, pets, but keep it brief. Make a cultural reference that seems appropriate, stuff like Game of Thrones, Star Wars, 90 Day Fiance, hint, hint. Sports, I guess, if you know things about that. Because you never know when you'll stumble upon a shared interest. You might also try starting the conversation by asking open ended questions that encourage your client to share information about themselves or their business. For example, why did you start your business? Or would you rather have no head or no body? Interesting answers to that one. And you'll also want to be yourself. So it's time to introduce yourself, your experience, but don't go on and on. List 2 or 3 of your most relevant projects. This is maybe controversial, but being uptight and cold and like experty, like I know how this is going to go. I'm an expert, blah, blah, blah. That can kind of be a turnoff in terms of collaboration. And authenticity can help establish trust and build a stronger connection with potential clients. So be yourself and let your personality go in terms of, let them notice your personality. If you're a silly goose, inject some humor into the conversation. It'll put you both at ease. And let's see here. Yeah, you're going to want to be excited. Share why you personally are psyched for the potential contract, project, whatever. Be genuine though, and show a custom sample if you can on a screen share. Sometimes I'll have like a Rise course that I have a template of, and for potential projects or clients, I'll update it with some information about the client. Just to kind of show that I care and that I thought about them ahead of time. And if I have some ideas, I put some stuff in there and I screen share it. Don't forget to engage in active listening, along with asking some follow-up questions to show that you are actually genuinely interested in what they're saying. And I always like to reiterate my excitement in a follow-up email, kind of like when you ask for a second date. But I also like to say, hey, no matter what happens with this project, I'm so glad we connected and happy to have you in my network, yada, yada, yada. All right, here we go. But don't be a hero. So you may be feeling tempted to try and be a hero and solve every problem, fulfill every request your potential client might have. You want to impress them, right? But it's not always feasible or sustainable. So instead, focus on providing high quality, reliable service that meets your client's needs within reasonable limits. What you really don't want to do is talk about how stressed you are running around with like a chicken with your head cut off, like, oh, like I'm doing all this by myself, but I'm so great, blah, 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 blah. Because that's just not how you want to come off. You want to come off like a business, so talk like a business. That means you can refer to yourself sort of as like my team will be on this, if you're in the kind of contract where you want to project that. And, technically it's not a lie if you consider all the multitudes we contain as human beings, right? You don't want to, like I said, you don't want to come off like a superhero making everything happen on your own. Kind of like limits people's perceptions of you. Okay. So, story time. I'm going to tell a little short story about before a contract. Well, one time I was working with someone, or I was, trying to propose myself to work with a client, and our mutual love of Law and Order Criminal Intent came out. If you know, you know. And honestly, that might be why I was selected. I don't know. I did have the experience. The project went well, but you never know what's going to come up. I think I made some sort of Men in Black joke about Edgar the bug, like sugar or water, because someone was like really thirsty on the client side on the call. And yeah, it just sort of rolled from there. So never underestimate the power of personal connection. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about during the contract. And we're going to cover making callbacks, checking in regularly, and your text game, right? I know it sounds crazy, but texting has kind of been a big part of my career. It's helped me be more efficient, get things answered, and it's also helped me make personal connections. Okay, during the contract. So think of your relationship with your client as a beautiful flower that you must tenderly care for in order for it to bloom to its fullest potential. And here are some hot tips for doing just that. Number one, make callbacks. Surely you've done this before to impress someone, like a friend, someone you have a crush on, a teacher, whatever. And stand-up comedians do this a lot, right? Like they make a joke and then they go through the rest of their set. And then at the end of their set, they might end with like a callback to their first joke that kind of brings everything together, right? And everybody laughs and laughs, like, oh, you're so witty for remembering that, and ha ha ha. Well, you can kind of do that with your potential, with your contracts and conversations. So the way to do this is to remember specific wants, details, or even life stuff that your client has mentioned and find a way to reference it during your conversations. Everyone likes being seen and heard. So it's a super easy and effective way to show that you're paying attention. Just don't be too obvious about it or bring up the same thing over and over again, like, oh, I hear you're from Connecticut. Oh, yeah, you're in Connecticut. Oh, you're in Connecticut. It could come off as creepy or annoying or trying too hard. Also, don't like Google them and find out their interests and then mention something really specific that they've been involved in because they'll be like, oh God, this person's stalking me. And we're on the wrong show. That's more of like a Dr. Phil situation. Okay. You can also, like I said, reference details about their life that you've learned from them, like stuff about their kids, pets, or even call out and reassure them about certain parts of the project that they said they were worried about or that's important to them. Like, oh, hey, just so you know, I know you're worried about, the LMS working in this certain way. Well, guess what? The one that we found, I double checked that it has X, Y, and Z. Just Excuse me. That's great. Burp on a webinar. That's awesome. It wasn't a full burp, promise. Um, yeah, anyway, so mention things that are important to them because half the battle is making your clients feel safe and comfortable working with you. It'll just help you get information from them easier and, make the project go smoother. Okay, number two, make check ins. Once a week check ins help keep things transparent and on track. Frequent updates foster connection, trust, and help you adjust expectations accordingly. Plus, checking in provides an opportunity to gather feedback and insight that can be used not only to improve your customer service, but also to tweak the project going forward. That way, you're not working on things sort of like in a void, and then the end of the contract's there, and you're like, "Hey, here's what I made." And then they're like, I hate it. And then you're like, oh shit, I should have showed you this before, right? I've heard of it, sounds crazy, but I've heard of people doing that. They just go work on something and then come back and go, how's this? Without ever asking anything or getting buy-in along the way. This feedback can help you stay ahead of the competition, make informed decisions about what you can offer in the future too. So make like that Monkey Dunstan and check in often. If you've seen that movie, please send me some sort of message or sign or smoke signal because I used to watch that movie all the time and I wanted to ride in the little like elevator in the hotel just like they did. Okay. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention the client should know the progress and status of the project at any given time. And every time you meet, it's a nice touch to have something visual for them to respond to, right? Whether that's like, hey, here's part of a storyboard if you're not done with it, or like, hey, we've been working on this little part of it. You want to see it? And just it just generates momentum and excitement. Okay, next up here, text game. So if your client seems into it, I like to send a text message every couple of weeks if I don't happen to have quick questions in between. It is really easy to text nowadays, so you don't really have an excuse. Um, think about all the time that you spend on TikTok that you could be shooting out some texts to clients to check in with them and sort of stay in their mind. Not in a creepy way, we're not overdoing it, but we're talking about quick questions, right? Exciting updates. You don't have any exciting updates, every couple of weeks? Make one up. Like, oh, hey, we just finished this thing that maybe you finished like a week ago, but they haven't quite seen yet. Just keep it fresh and take the client's lead when it comes to the tone and enthusiasm, right? And these exciting updates, my tummy hurts today does not count. But if you've bonded, you can also check in about an important event in their life. Maybe they went to a wedding, maybe their kid graduated swim lessons, or something non-work related you talked about, like, oh, hey, I heard we're going to see Pedro Pascal's vase again in The Mandalorian, right? Things like that. I have some examples here that I'm going to look at my other screen to sort of explain to you. So you'll see here, we've got some exclamation points. This is going to be fun. I can't wait to start. Empathy, hey, that makes sense. This client mentioned something about Encanto, and I literally did just have him at arepas that night. Um, yeah, and I also made a little joke because this client was pretty down to earth and like not corporatey. So I was joking that like, sounding corporatey, my team is poised to do whatever is needed, right? Um, and then even just little things to show that you have a life and a personality and you're not just some like boring contractor that they're working with. So they said yes to this question. And I said, oh, I'll send it after I open a popsicle for a little person. They knew I had kids and, popsicles are a very important part of life when you have kids, right? Let's see here. And so I'll explain this one in a second, but some points I wanted to make. The vibes that you want to project with text messages. Fast response if you can, with energy. If you're open to it and they text you, after 5 p.m., respond to it. And it should be short bursts, strategic exclamation points. Don't overdo it. Don't be afraid to add some emojis, right? I like the little melting emoji and the sweating happy emoji. Those are kind of like my two most used ones because they're kind of funny, but they're self-deprecating. It goes well. And just in case you're wondering, there is a way to do this and still be professional. You're being yourself, right? If you're a nerd, embrace it. If you're into crystals and witch stuff, go for it, right? As long as you're doing your work and, the vibe is right, you want things to be pleasant when it comes to working with you. And you have to find your own flow with this and think about how you connect with your friends. See if you can bring any of those approaches to your clients. Maybe you like to send Chris Farley gifts to people. Maybe your client also loves Chris Farley, right? Maybe they feel like Matt Foley sometimes and they're just trying to get back on the right track. It's okay. You'll find this out by, sort of exploring people's personalities. So this slide here, text game stronger, and you'll see why. Because by this time we were towards the end of the project and we had really gotten to know each other and we were just banging stuff out and having fun. Um, But some real points to make before I get into the fun stuff. Another helpful hint when it comes to texting your client. Okay, like I said, respond fast. You want to show them that you're available and ready to respond to their questions and concerns. No one is expecting you to be the human equivalent of Siri or anything, but generally try to be available. This isn't your uncle texting you weird conspiracy theories. This is a paying client, so get back to them as soon as you can. Okay, let's get into this one because this is my favorite, and it kind of, yeah, we'll get to the next thing. Um, so here, this person was like, oh, the contract was ending, and they called it breaking up, and they were like, I want to delay this as long as possible, which is the goal. And I said, is this about to turn into a Lifetime movie? If so, I've been waiting my entire life for this, which is true. And then she said she shared that with the team, and they're laughing, and they said, oh, like, that's a great idea. Let's kidnap her. And then I told them, to make it a true Lifetime movie, make sure when you get to my house, I need to have enough time to stumble up the stairs, lock myself in a closet on the top floor with no way to escape, because that is how every Lifetime movie ends. And that was just fun. They got a kick out of that. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then breaking up is hard to do. They referenced that oldie song. I did actually have a dance recital to that song, and then we had a little laugh about it. And then I think we talked about it in the next meeting that we had. So these little references, these little things to kind of grease the wheels of like making things pleasant, they go a long way. And yeah, quick sort of anecdote story, not a full story, is yes, I have consensually received like drunk text about adult sci-fi novels from one of my clients. We've shared sparkling rosé brand preferences, and now this client is one of my closest friends, and she's the best. So if you just let yourself be open to it, and if it's, going well, don't be afraid to kind of get a little bit deeper into getting to know each other. Again, in a professional way, in a way that isn't weird or forceful. Sometimes it's just not going to work like that, right? But sometimes it does. And when it does, it can feel really cool. Like it can feel like, hey, I just made a friend, but also like we're doing really cool work together. And that's always a fun feeling. Okay, so we're done with during the contract. Now it's up to um, after the contract. So we're going to talk about leaving a lasting impression on your client after the project has wrapped up. So we'll cover, you know, the thinking of you text, which, yeah, we'll talk about that. The make them jealous, and then taking the hint if they're over you. So let's go. All right. Wrapping up a project with your client doesn't mean the magic has to come to an abrupt end. Maintaining a positive relationship shows that you value the client's satisfaction beyond just completing the project. This can help you win big points and maybe even open up some doors for future gigs, either from the same client or from a referral. Okay, the first one, thinking of you. Okay, do not send your client an edible arrangement. Absolutely no one on the planet wants a basket full of fruit unless they're all covered in chocolate, right? Who wants anything but the chocolate covered strawberries? Let's be real. Maybe I'm biased because I'm allergic to most fruit, and somehow covering it in chocolate magically makes me not allergic. This is true. That's, riddle me that. If you want to show that you're worth holding on to as a freelancer, grow up and send them one of those assorted boxes of movie theater sized candy, right? Um, but the good kind that doesn't include a variety of M&Ms, Yeah. Oh wait, no. I guess some people like M&Ms. I'm more of like a bunch of crunch person. Anyway, if you see something that reminds you of your client, don't be afraid to say hi, or just make up a reason to say hi anyway. And make them jealous, right? So when you're checking in with your client, tell them about a cool project that you're working on that you think they'd really like. Is it a little manipulative? Sure. But business is manipulative. We live in capitalism, right? Or whatever we're called. I don't know. Is it really capitalism anymore? God only knows. Um, and there's nothing wrong with planting a little jealousy here and there, especially if it could lead to an opportunity to work with a client you really like again. And number 3, take the hint. Let's say, shucks, let's say sometimes your client might just not be the right lid for your pot, right? There's that thing, there's a lid for every pot in this world. That's okay. If the client isn't very responsive or is super unenthusiastic when you chat, they're probably not that into you. Move on. And if they don't respond to you, move on. If they can't appreciate you for the wonderful unicorn freelancer you are, somebody else will. And now, if people that I knew back in high school knew I was telling the story, they would laugh and laugh and laugh. But alas, I don't really know anybody from high school anymore, minus one person. It is what it is. Okay, so thinking of you, this little section was inspired by a text message that I received from a guy who had a crush on me in high school. He may or may not have been the only person, to my knowledge, who had a crush on me in high school, but this isn't therapy, so let's not talk about that here. Um, he texted me from his Nokia phone while in a tent at Boy Scout camp. I had zero interest in him. He may or may not have had the essence of a potato. I'm sure he was a nice person, I guess, but some things maybe not so much. Anyway, it did make me think twice, though. No one had ever given me that kind of attention. Um, and I'm still talking about it now, and I am not in high school anymore, despite the fact that some people look at me and think I'm from high school, or they hear my voice and say, hey, you should voice a Disney raccoon. But yeah, if you encounter someone, or if you encounter something that reminds you of your client, whether it's a restaurant, a movie, industry article, say hi. Like I said, just make one up if you want to, and say hi a couple months after the project's done anyway. Um, and once you, like we said before, if you mention something cool that you're doing for a project that they might be interested in, then do that and then ask how they are, what they've been up to. You basically want to make them want you back, and don't forget to take the hint if they're not into you. If you don't click, don't force it, because you'll find your client soulmate soon. All right, here we go. Looks like we did all the things. We're wrapping up here. Okay, your clients should think you're pretty, right? P, it's for pleasant. Don't be a grouch. Working with you should be stress-free and even fun. R, for reliable. Be accountable, communicative, consistent, always hit your deadlines, don't make promises you can't keep. E, exclusive. Don't be talking about all your side chicks, clients. To quote Rihanna, and this always did well when I've done this presentation live a couple of times, make them feel like they're the only girl in the world. T is for timely. Use your intuition to stay one step ahead of their expectations. Provide a regular update and bonus updates to keep the momentum and energy up. Other T, trustworthy. Make sure to use that "do you trust me" line from Titanic a lot. Really listen to what is important to them and act on it. The little details go a long way. Your goal should be to, you know, be a trusted partner instead of an order taker. You don't want to be like, well, sure, if that's what you want, because it's kind of condescending and it's no fun to work with. You want to be empathetic also to any stress that your client might be under. And why year round? Always be open and flexible. If a project goes well, stay in touch. Don't fade away forever. Find reasons to say hi throughout the year to foster that connection. It doesn't always have to be about work. It can be like, hey, I just remembered you moved this month. Hope all is well. But don't feel obligated to help them move, because I know some people get desperate to have people help them move. So there we go. We've learned the practical steps we can take before, during, and after a contract to make an impression on your client, right? If you don't have any past, current, or future clients in your sights at the moment, that's fine. Dry spells are a natural part of being a freelancer. So what I usually do is use this time for personal development, professional development, figuring out marketing stuff, and make sure you take the tips you've learned today and think of ways that you can personally apply them using your own perspective and voice, right? You're not going to have the same sense of humor as me or the next person or, you know, anyone else. So be you. And remember that the ultimate goal, just like any friendship or relationship, is you want them to want more of you, right? This text message was one of the funniest I've ever received. Also funny because at that time, was I happily married? Who knows? If you know me, you know now I am. But yeah, anyway. Um, so yeah. Make sure you follow these tips if this is your vibe, right? This is all taken with a grain of salt. If you're not comfortable with it, don't worry about it. But There's probably a way that you can do this with with your comfort level and the personality that you have. Here's some of our contact information. Here's our website and our email address. If you want to talk to me about any of this or tell me a funny client story of something that went really well or really wrong if you use this advice, I would love to hear about it. And you can click the link below to join our Slack community. And thank you. Thank you for listening. This is my first webinar. Hopefully the next ones will be smoother. If you have any feedback on how this could be better, let me know. And keep an eye out for the next episodes of Out to Lunch, which will be coming soon. Thanks.